Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another TV show spoiler review. And today we'll be covering Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 3. Been wanting to get back into this once I wrapped up all of Star Wars reviews that I've been doing since roughly earlier this year. Which you can check all those out on my channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, if you want to hear my thoughts about the TV shows so far, and the movies. Anywho, I forgot how long this season was, but it's probably like the most serious. I think it's kind of like it's Waking of the Dragons arc as far as uh, GX is concerned, and it started off in like a decent pace because I like because it's like the first 6, 8 episodes pretty much like two-parters where you get introduced to these new characters to the series, and these kind of new characters are, you know, I think that's why I kind of like them because we had two-parters dedicated to like us getting to know these guys. Uh, uh, you got Jesse Ederson, the Southern uh, guy with the Crystal Beast deck that he won from a tournament as a prize from Maximilian Pegasus. Uh, uh, then you got who's pretty much like a splitting image of Jaden, just with a Southern accent. Then you got Axel Brody, who's pretty much like, very combat survivalist kind of guy, but he's like a play on Axel Foley from it's from the Western Academy, pretty much uh uh the a play on Axel Foley from the Beverly Hills Cop films, played by Eddie Murphy. I did my spoiler review of the first movie, which is up on the channel as well. You can check out my thoughts on that. Who plays with like a pyro deck kind of monster? Pyro deck as more volcanic style cards, pretty much like based off armaments like missiles or like uh uh like uh it's like a volcanic shell, like like buckshocks from shotguns, and you know uh you got cannons and stuff like that. It's very militaristic type of cards mixed with like fire types, which I appreciated because you don't get a lot of fire deck kind of cards being like prominently shown in this franchise. And I think Axel is pretty much like the set a high bar so far as like fire decks. Uh, uh, then you got Adrian Gecko, who's got a bit of a past too. We'll get into these guys, here and there throughout the review. But he plays with a Cloudian deck, was pretty much based off like he'd go through like at least two different deck changes. He started off with like a Cloudian deck, pretty much based off like different types of clouds or weather stuff, like Nimbus clouds, or like you know uh you know well, I can't really say the actual technical names of these clouds, but you get the idea of like Nimbus and like Cloudian sheep and things like that. Uh, and then you get Thelonious Viper, who's also from like the Western Academy, but he's definitely from the military, given his like the way he dresses is very mixed with like the school uniform, but very militaristic type of decorum. And him and Adrian Gecko are like just jacked to all hell. And these two is actually the only time, I won't say the only time, but it's always a very few times in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh franchise we actually get an actual fist fight, which you don't get to see a lot of, or at least on screen. Because I think like the first time in memory I actually see like on contact physical fight in Yu-Gi-Oh is when Joey in Waking of the Dragons. I could be wrong, because prior to that, because in Duelist Kingdom you see, well, you don't see, but you like off screen, Tristan get hit by Joey for thinking like, at least second, or at least not giving Joey the proper encouragement to duel on his own terms without being babied. But the first time we actually get to see physical altercation, at least in my memory, is when after Yamayugi fell to the dark side slightly, thanks to the seal of Orichalcos, and little Yugi, took his place and got his soul taken away to have Yamayugi keep on fighting to stop darks. When Joey found out, he socked Yamayugi right in the face, and you actually get to see that play out, and they didn't shy away from it. This year, the full-on fisticuffs going on, martial arts going on, which is very unique, and you like to see that every once in a while. I guess like Kids WB is like very weird in a lot of ways when it comes to like certain things that they allow and will not allow for Western audience. Anyway, it's the third year. We get to see Blair. What's her last name? Blair Flanagan, or I think it's Blair Flanagan, but just Blair, who showed up as like a little tropey little kid who's sneaking into the academy on her assumed age, when she wasn't old enough. She was like at least a year shy of actually being able to apply and go to Duel Academy. She snuck in just to meet Zane and everything like that, but now she's making her a full-on first year in this third year for Jaden's case. And you also get to meet this new kid called Marcel. And he doesn't get a lot of screen time. The only time you have to see, more of him is when he's possessed by this dark entity. You get to see a little snippets here and there that you later know to be known as Yubel. And Yubel, throughout this entire season, had it out for Jaden, using anybody she can find to use to manipulate in order to exact her ultimate revenge against Jaden. And throughout the time, like, at least earlier in the season, Jaden's been getting like these nightmares, and he doesn't know, what the cause or who is this, haunting his dreams. But the first duel of the year is between like Jesse and Jaden, and prior to this, they already like bumped into each other. They like had this camaraderie, and they just immediately click. You meet those kind of people that you just immediately just click with. We all had that moment. It's just like, you just vibe so well. Cyrus, he is like, now went from Royal Yellow to Opulus Blue, but his little arc is just like kind of funny, because you would think he has some level of growth. Now maybe it's the English dub is the probably the cause of this, but he's still pretty whiny. Like it's still like the first year. Now, granted, he's not backing down from like duels or acting like a scared little kitty cat, but he's still like he act like a total male damsel in distress. I was like, I mean, you're Obelisk Blue. I mean, like you don't act like you don't have like any bit of confidence. It's like they. It seems very backtracking with him, and then like later on, getting towards like the tail end of the season, they were in like, swing too far in the other, end of the pendulum too quickly. In my opinion, but I kind of go jumping all over the place. But Thelonious Viper, introducing these dual wristbands, these little metal bands, that kind of monitor. They kind of lock in place, which is kind of weird. Even Crowler and Bonaparte brings it up as like this is kind of odd, and Chancellor Shepard, just like well, he implemented these over in his academy. Why don't we give this a shot? And I was like it's doing it done exceptionally well over here. So like, why don't we give this a little try? And it's like, why? And it's like you didn't do it. I mean, like, it doesn't seem like the Chancellor didn't do his research, because later on you find out these things that's supposed to be monitoring these kids' dueling skills, and what's supposed to do is like document, okay, their skill level, and the people with the lowest, who got the lowest rankings, out of all these students, they get expelled from Duel Academy because they didn't meet the criteria that Viper set, and it's kind of like they end up flunking out. But it seems too doggone suspicious. It's like having like a substitute teacher coming on in and implementing all these rules without first fact checking any of this stuff or doing kind of hard cut research. You seem like you just going off of it's like when people jump to conclusions on Twitter from a headline without doing any kind of research. Is like that. Then but nobody's paying any mind aside from because Cyrus has suspicions, even though Cyrus has been breaking the fourth wall a lot throughout this entire season. And a couple other people like Adrian Gecko, points out when he was in a duel, and it's like because he dueled against Chaz, and Chaz says something. It's like, oh, how are you going to do that? And Adrian Gecko was like, well, I just call out the card's name and they flip face up, man. And it's like, it always cracks me up when they break the fourth wall like that. But Cyrus is like mentioned, like, for once I want to be like the hero who saves the day. Maybe some evil person comes and try to takes over the Duel Academy, and I'm the one that duels him and saves the day. But he kind of backtracks and turns to when he was. It's kind of funny like that, but he kind of gets that wish at the end of all this. But Viper is just another pawn, even though he's like probably the most dangerous pawn that I've seen in an anime. But he is being used by this entity that you learn about his backstory, that he was in the military, and on one of his missions, because something fell from the sky and his unit's supposed to investigate, uh, it was in dangerous territory. Well, not dangerous territory. I'm thinking of because we'll get into it, but he found this entity on one of these missions after his, the uh, helicopter him and his team was riding in, you know, uh, crashed. Uh, he found this thing, and it promised him to bring his son back. Now his son is an adopted son he found in like years ago, uh, uh, on a mission overseas, and it was like a crying baby. The boy was a crying baby at the time, and Viper, he was running with his unit, but as his unit was like trucking on, he stopped because he heard like a baby crying. He stopped and like saved his kid from this because it was the baby was alone and it was in this kind of like a abandoned home, but because he stopped for this baby, his unit in the sub got killed by some unknown enemy. In the dub, they were captured, but this baby saved his life. He took it upon himself to adopt this kid. uh, he raised this boy before he went on tour again. He was saying his goodbyes to his son, gave him these Duel Monsters cards. Because the gust of wind blew it out of the boy's hands, he raced to in the middle of the street and got hit by a car. He was devastated, and this entity promised to bring his son back to life if he helped him out on if Viper helped her out on her vendetta. So these machinations are starting to become in play. These dual bands is supposed to suck is in all actuality is sucking all this dual energy, is or at least I think in the subs more their life force. Every time they give it their all in their duel, the energy they these wristbands acknowledge is sapping their energy and transferring it to this tube thing where this entity is like absorbing their power to regrow itself. uh uh Even though Sai has his suspicions, even though he's calling out like a guy named Viper, do you really think he's not a bad guy? But Jaden, throwing caution to the wind like he always does, is like, you're dreaming, Cyrus. You're such a worry wart. And then of course it goes running off blubbering like, Jaden, you won't listen to me. Blah. Like, and Jackson's like, poor little guy. But then Axel, working at the time underneath Viper, was in charge of seeking out Jaden specifically to harness his dual energy, and he was supposed to drag out the duel between him and Jaden, possibly per the request of Yubel, just to because Yubel is very sadistic, and she wanted to make sure like Jaden suffer in any way imaginable, whether physically, emotionally, and mentally, which is makes her at least one of the most lethal slash sadistic villains in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. To go to such lengths to make a person to make a particular main character suffer the way Jaden has been suffering. I'm pretty sure he was suffering the most out of all the main protagonists in the franchise. I mean, like, you think Merrick was like a sadistic bastard, and he was, but like Yubel took it to a whole nother level, because despite like this is more so Yami Merrick. This is like a split personality kind of thing, exacting, uh, you know, uh, revenge based off of Merrick's negative emotions, and his like being beaten as a child by his father and forced into this servitude as a gravekeeper, and seeking revenge against the Pharaoh for his poor childhood. Is another thing with Yubel when it's like she felt just completely abandoned and isolated, because you find out that she was like isolated. She's like a monster card actually, and she was sent off into space. And Jaden, of course, ended up forgotten more so because, and this is where it gets kind of this is probably one of the few occasions where the Kids WB had to kind of censor it a bit because it gets very like wild. Young Jaden was succumbed to because his parents put him through electrical shock therapy because they didn't believe that Yubel was the cause of a lot of pain that he didn't know was being, because he didn't know Yubel was hurting other duelists that young Jaden was dueling, because she just saw it as like a threat to him. No matter the duelist, she is taking like protecting this kid, being the guardian to this kid, to dangerous levels, to the point where like anybody's a threat. It's kind of like if you remember from the episode of The Mandalorian, the first season, where Cara Dune was arm wrestling with Din Djarin. Baby Yoda is, because he doesn't understand this is not like a threat. He perceives it as a threat because his young mind seeing like, oh, Mando is in distress, even though he's grunting and like exerting effort and there's physical contact. He just sees like, you're hurting my dad. Force choke. Like, and Bando's kind of like, no, I'm okay. She has that kind of mindset, or at least, she's just like chooses not to understand that it's not, Jaden isn't always in danger. I'm getting like a little bit ahead of myself, but Axel dueling Jaden, even though Axel is not a complete, bad guy, he's just like following orders kind of thing, until he throws it all away when he realizes Viper is using him for like more nefarious means. Oh, and I forgot about Jim Crocodile Cook, who's pretty much like, paleontologist. He's pretty much like playing off of Steve Irwin, the late Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. And he walking around with this crocodile named Shirley. And Jim in the manga was is played more evil there than the dub or sub anime version, which I think was a good call, because I actually like Jim, and his deck is pretty much based off like fossils, but it's pretty much like rock type deck, which is the thing that you don't normally see either, a rock type deck. It's pretty much like, with Akiza with the plants. It's like giving love to these, different types of monsters that you don't widely see with a particular set of support cards. But I think like Jim and his like fossil deck, they need more of his deck to be fleshed out in the real world. But I like that is like his rock type deck, technically based off of like fossils like the Mesozoic era and stuff like that. And with Axel's pyro type, and then Akiza's like plant types and stuff like that, that they definitely need more love. Um, but then, like, Shirley and to an extent, uh, Hasselberry sensing vibrations, unusual vibrations in the air, because whenever that machine is turned on, or at least active, when it is like is draining dual energy, they go kind of wild. And if you don't remember my season 2 review of Yu-Gi-Oh GX, I mentioned about Hasselberry having like a, because he was on the excavation site. He had an accident. They had to quickly replace his a bone in his leg with a dinosaur bone, and that's how he got like dinosaur DNA. So that's why you see his eyes go to slits. He's very dinosaur like. He gets he can't help himself but become a little bit more feral, uh, because he's sensing the vibrations as well. And this is starting like a mystery, because like, okay, things are getting kind of weird around here. And uh and then you get like Bonaparte and uh Crowler, who's subbing for Chancellor Shepard, because he's always off doing some random stuff. Instead of being a goddamn principal, he's off doing like a own little side quest kind of thing. But you never see it until like middle of the season what he was up to. Uh, uh, these two are acting like two of the, like, out of the three Stooges without Mo in place to keep things in line. Cause like, here's my issue with Crowler. I expected him to be like the Professor Snape of Yu-Gi-Oh GX, where he's actually, a good guy with just like rough edges, and just very like, Professor Snape. And on top of that, while I'm going off the Harry Potter metaphor, this is very Goblet of Fire, or the movie after Goblet of Fire. Is very like, things gets pretty heavy in this season for GX, because like Harry Potter, the first couple of seasons, like the first couple of movies, the first couple of seasons, relatively light, with a few dark overtones. But it's the first school year, and things is a little bit more chipper, jokey. But then, like, as the years goes on, because you're following these, I think it was very apt. It's only had 4 seasons, although the fourth season never had like an English dub. But you see, like, you follow these progressions of these kids that they started as freshmen and now they're seniors, and they're getting a little older, a little bit more wiser, mature. And you definitely see that with Jaden. And like the third year is pretty much his, like his Dark Knight, like went from Batman Begins to Dark Knight, when things gets, kind of heavy for him. Uh, with uh, you get to see like Adrian Gecko and his backstory. He's from a rich family, and Chaz is like, like not having that, because he's like, Chaz is being Chaz, and it's like he just sees it as like a threat to his station as like the only rich guy in Duel Academy. But I'm thinking to myself, isn't like the other Obelisk Blue people are from affluent uh uh people come from affluent families or backgrounds, but maybe he's like the richest at that time up until Gecko came into play, because Gecko comes from the Gecko family fortune. He was abandoned by his parents, and he was found by this rich family. They took him under their wing, and he was raised as a Gecko from that point on. And everything was hunky dory until the parents finally conceived a child, his little brother, which, even though is very like polar opposite to like Kaiba and Mokuba, even though we don't see much of the younger brother, and it's usually through flashbacks, but there's no like camaraderie. They're not like joined at the hip, most of the time. Yeah, you only see like uh, Adrian's friend slash love interest, like Echo, and Echo is like I got an issue with Echo. She is such a like you talking about ride or die. She takes it to a whole nother level where she's like she loves him so much she like uh willing to like leave him to rule in a different dimension uh just to make sure he's happy because you know he was like a great life and he's such a good person he wouldn't even like hurt his younger brother even though that meant that because like his younger brother got sick one time and nobody knew what's going on. None of the doctors could figure it out. Adrian Gecko, despite this would mean where like if the boy just be allowed to pass away, he will be the sole heir. But it's not even about the money. It's just because he was abandoned but loved by these two people that losing that or at least having to share that kind of like made like give him a bit of jealousy. Is that type of story like you seen like Hallmark movies, but he did not allow himself to succumb to like that to where he's like I know what the right thing to do is despite my personal feelings. I won't let this kid die. So he goes to this medicine shop, this like very Eastern type of in the slums shop where he found some more naturalistic medicine that saved his little brother's life. But despite all that, despite him excelling like sports, martial arts, and all this other stuff, uh, he felt like he's losing his affection from his parents, his adoptive parents. And Echo, she become like I don't know, like her his personal bodyguard or something, because she's very like she's dressed like she's like from like the Navy. She even like have like Navy personnel and stuff like that. I don't know what was her deal is, but like I said, she is like not even like a good ride or die. She is like the annoying version of a ride or die chick. She's not even like expressing her feelings toward this guy at all. She just does whatever without any kind of. And this could have easily have been played well, but it doesn't seem like it played well to me. Where she just like maybe it's the sub that's better at defining it than the dub, but she is just like full on like screw that. I want to make sure this guy lives a happy life, even if it's not with me, even if it's in a different dimension. He's going to rule because that's what he meant to do. But yeah, because she's annoying. But then things are starting to turn like pear-shaped when kids are just passing out for mass exhaustion. The energy kept getting sucked up despite the nurse wherever she tried to do to fix things. It's like it's starting to become like a bit of epidemic, and like they don't know what's going on. Really, you don't know what's going on. What was the turning point? Nothing like this was happening prior to Vipers coming on board and introducing these bands. You don't think what's going on? It took them a while before they figured it out. But that's mostly on Adrian Gecko's part by holding this big party and dual party, and like now while Viper wanted to be very subtle when it's like he won't be looked at for quite a while as a possible suspect if it's like people falling from exhaustion in increments. Now with people passing out in mass, thanks to this party, because Adrian Gecko is like, doing this like uh spy stuff, spying on Viper. uh he figured out there's like, something afoot. And this is going beyond, like, at this point it's out Viper's hands at this point. Like, he's like, now it's like, it's dangerously overloading the machine. And like, now he's going to be looked at as a possible like suspect. Now he's got to do like a workaround or move up a timetable. So now Alexis, Jaden, Cyrus, Jim, Hasselberry, they all are, and Jesse are searching for Viper, and thanks to Gecko pointing out like, oh, there's like a facility, which, if you remember in like season 1, it was previously used by some scientists to experiment on these animals. That's where you get like that dueling monkey situation. Viper took it over, which I don't understand why that hasn't been like torn down and completely. Same way with like that where like, Titan, who kidnapped Alexis, or even like disappearing students, that little former dormitory, why none of that was been torn down whatsoever. Why is this facilities even on this campus in the first place is beyond me. But anyway, they go Scooby doing this shit into this facility, and now Viper is pretty much, setting off these traps, separating these guys. And here's the thing I want to point out about Alexis really quick. She has turned, and this is my biggest gripe with Yu-Gi-Oh! As a franchise entirely. I don't know what is their line of thinking when, I'm not even blaming the sub or the dub animators, is they going off of what is in like the manga, I believe. Well, no, I can't even put on the manga. I'm pretty sure, because I haven't read the manga, so I don't know, but it's like, there's like a fair bit from the manga that they use. But I doubt even in the manga books that these female leads, they're supposed to be hardcore duelists, at least the bulk of them, always end up turning out to be like, just stands for the male protagonist. Like, you see that with Akiza when she coming out like strong as like even though she was like a kind of evil, but when she turned good, she seemed like she lost her agency. My Valentine, she's supposed to be like a badass duelist with like tons of wins under her belt, but ever since she became like doing her on-screen stuff, she lost a fair amount than what she won, and she become like a just like a sideline kind of character. And Alexis, another big deal. She, in the first season, seemed like a badass duelist with a Cyber Angel type of deck. She's an Obelisk Blue for a reason, but no, she's become like a, like falling, Jaden like a little puppy dog. I don't know whatever happened to her doggone, girlfriends that, you see piling around with her in the first season. And she become like a fucking nag. And then she like, worrying about things that you don't think Alexis would care about. Like, like I'm blanking on the word, like, jewelry. And when like she see like Jesse duel Jaden, you see these crystal beasts, and it's like, I want precious crystals. I was like, who are you? And like, I want precious crystals. I was like, you didn't care about any of this stuff. You're talking like when your goofy friends will be saying things like that. That's the kind of thing they would care about, because they shallow as fuck. I don't like the way he treated Alexis, and she's naggy, she's bitchy, and it's like there's a difference between like a strong, self-confident female character, then you, then the other flip side of it being just like a naggy, shallow bitch, and that's not Alexis in my mind. And it's weird. It's like a completely disrespecting the entire character. Uh, but then this is where it gets like kind of pivotal. This is like like something like I zeroed in on. I'm pretty sure I acknowledged this when I was watching this show when I was younger, but now that like I'm doing like deep dives and reviewing these things for the channel, I pay attention to certain key things, and like this duel against this Obelisk Blue professor that we never seen before. I guess he's kind of fairly new, I guess, but this guy named Professor Stein. I guess kind of play on maybe Frankenstein or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure, but he talks like the Clear Eyes guy from those commercials back in the 90s. Very dry and talk like this. And if you ever watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he's the teacher in that, and his talk's very boring, and that was always his shtick. In recent years, nobody really liked that guy, given his like political outlook, because it's like not that he's MAGA or anything like that, but he's kind of like kind of got a wild view of certain things that is kind of weird. But anywho, he duels Jaden because he's working with Viper now, because Viper convinced him that despite him being like supposed to be a good teacher, whatever like that, he's convinced that all these students who came here to learn how to be better duelists see that they come to class less and less, at least in his particular class from what is being seen, that he blames Jaden for the lack of studious classmates. They figured, they looked without Jaden realizing it. And I think Jaden isn't taking that in until like several episodes later, when things start to get like heavy. It rings home to him eventually, but Stein points out, whether or not you realize it, you are an idol to these kids. You're a role model, and they see you as like, oh, you're an ace duelist and you barely show up to class. They figure, oh, I can like shirk my studies and still be like a great duelist like Jaden, because Jaden doesn't have to study. He got like piss poor grades half the time, and yet he's the number one duelist here. So what's the point of me coming to class, kind of thing? Or you see some people even sleeping in class. And he points out even Alexis, who's supposed to be like the most studious among them, eventually stop coming to class and start following the footsteps of Jaden. And that's kind of like, it's like imagine like Harry Potter. I'm using Harry Potter as like an example of this, because it's pretty much like Harry Potter with dual monster cards, where Harry, he acknowledges eventually he's like kind of like a role model to people after maybe like a second year moving forward, but he doesn't want to view himself as that. He doesn't want to put himself above everybody else, kind of thing. But he acknowledges it, that people looked at him. Whether or not he wants it, he acknowledges it. Jaden doesn't seem like he acknowledges it at all. He just goes with the flow, kind of thing. He's very aloof, and likes a good duel, that kind of thing. He's not, as he puts it, he doesn't see. He's not seeking out to be like anybody's role model, but he is, whether he likes it or not, especially after the past couple of years, him beating, all these big bad guys and saving the world. He has to, see that, people see him as like a, at first they look down on him because of his obelisk red rank, even though he should have risen up like Cyrus did to like blue rank at this point. But he likes being like the red. He liked the red dorm, that kind of thing, which I'm not going to begrudge him for that. But uh, despite him beating Stein, uh, he's not taking that to heart at all. That you know, uh, he's been coasting. Whether or not he realized he'd been coasting on his, you know, celebrity, and yeah, he got skills, but uh, I'm blanking on where I got this from. It's from a movie, but uh, I think it's Star Wars. I think it's like a New Hope, maybe, but it's like skills or talent without like kind of like knowledge or study or anything like that means nothing, kind of thing. I'm pretty sure that's some in one of the Star Wars earlier Star Wars movies. And uh, then Jaden and the gang finally bumps into Viper, and he plays with a snake venom deck, a Viper, whatever. And uh, that's when like, despite beating Viper, uh, uh, and the entity Ubel finally takes somewhat of a form, but in the form of like a of Viper's son. In the sub, uh, because Viper still failed him, Ubel tricks him to believing like his son is like, because they own this little rising tower. It's like not crazy high like a like a building. It's like at least it can easily be like 5-6 stories up maybe. And his son's like over at the edge, and like you know, thanks to Ubel's whammy he puts on Viper, it's like, son, son, you're here. And then like as he's trying to like embrace his son, he falls over and dies. In the dub, he just disappears. And even in like, which is kind of tragic. It's just he did all this because he wanted his son back. The the person who saved his life, and he dedicated himself to raise and take care of and love. And it's like, he dies trying to in the end try to revive his son. But even in the midst of the duel between Viper and Jaden, Viper points out that you know Jaden, like, you're selfish. You only duel for yourself. Me, I dueling for somebody. And like that's, I wouldn't say that's hollow, but Jaden, in his past duels, duel for at least during like this, I guess like Sartorius or like uh I forgot the first big bad of the guy who's stepped the Shadow Riders, like that guy. I think like superintendent or whatever he was. Uh, despite dueling them to save the world, because he wasn't doing for himself, but with all things going on and with Viper's trying to get inside his head in a way, because Viper doesn't know. He only sees like surface level stuff. I'm not sure he knows the detail of what Jaden has done for the world by especially defeating the light of destruction with the power of the gentle darkness, kind of like a inverse of what you expect from a typical storytelling. Because like kind of like from like days of the cowboys, it's like or like the westerns, it's like the guy with the white hat is always the good guy, and the guy with the black hat, it was always the bad guy. But this is like kind of flip it, where it's like, like a guy with a white hat turns out to be a sadistic bastard, while the guy with the black hat is the un, uh, the unsuspecting hero. Uh, but Yubel caused a rift in like this dimension where he sucks uh, part of Duel Academy, or at least the main school, leaving like a crater behind. He sucks it into this different dimension, the sand dimension, where you see certain dual monsters, here, like like the harpies and like these sand, you know, you know, scorpion creatures things, and like dual spirits are alive where people can see them now, but uh, the damage you get, which is weird because like they make it seem like they're very weird with it in during like previous seasons where it's like you know aside from like the battle with the main bad guy where things gets like like real damage kind of thing. Prior to all that, they make it seem like the damage is like real when it's like when you get like attacked directly or something like that. But it's like it's not real. It's supposed to be holograms. But then like when you're in like a different dimension, now things real. That was really hurt. Like what's all that stuff before? But yeah, the damage is real here, and since the dual wristbands, which is supposed to be shut off by Adrian, but the Yubel got in his head because he wants, since he doesn't want to take over the company that belongs to, he feels, to his younger brother. He feel that I'll just rule I'll just rule the world with getting power and rule the world in its entirety, so that way all the other stuff is pointless to me. But the wristbands are still in effect, so he didn't shut it off. And like along the way, I'm saying like, okay, why don't you just take those things off? I find out looking on the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom wiki, it mentions about like in the sub where, because he didn't mention it in the dub, they didn't want to put that in because like somebody mentions like aside from cutting off your own hand, you can't take these doggone things off because it's like bolted shut to not bolted to your wrist, but it's like it's kind of like a watch, but it's sealed closed and it's automatic. It doesn't come off unless you shut down the machine that controls them, which is kind of like a weird thing because in their initial thought process, it's supposed to monitor them, and taking it off is like an automatic kind of I guess it would be like an automatic kind of and maybe not expulsion, but like a failed grade or something like that. But it's sealed, so they can't take it off. But all the while, Yubel still need the energy, so she kind of possess. She's kind of like in a spiritual format, even though she got a spiritual body, she needs a physical form. So she still need more dual energy to get that. So she possessed Marcel, and Marcel is hidden away while people who are still like going to any kind of duel, they are turned to dual ghouls, where like they get so exhausted they get turned to mindless puppets by Yubel, and it's become like another epidemic where it's like they keep getting up and dueling until like the other duels become exhausted and they become mind slaves, in not mind slaves but just dual ghouls themselves, and become part of the horde. Now, and you got like Marcel end up hurting Blair because she's, you see her interaction with Marcel earlier, who turns out to be Bonaparte's son, who he didn't want to hold any kind of favoritism, so they pretend not to be his father. But Blair, I guess sees like probably got like affection for Marcel, but he's not really fully explored. But you can tell because she treats him like a mother hen kind of thing. Not like a mother hen, but it's kind of like at that party held by Gecko, she's like trying to like, here, you're a scrawny, you need to eat. And it's like either you're treating like your like nagging girlfriend kind of thing. It's like uh I don't know where that hell that come from, but she's worried about Marcel, that kind of thing. Uh, but that's whatever. Didn't really care about that little D plot there. But now it's like she's sick, but she's like probably injured in the dove. So they need to go to. They Adrian points out about this like submarine where Echo was at the time. Uh, that became sucked into this dimension with the school building, and so they got to go to. They hatch a plan to go with a small group with Axel, Jaden, Cyrus, Jim, Jesse. They go to the submarine. They will have all these medical supplies. All the while, Ubel is sending out all these like monsters out and uh, manipulating students into his flunkies, just causing more havoc. And Jaden is like he's it's obviously he's not having fun anymore. This is very serious, and he's trying to work their way and trying to figure out how to get everybody back into their own dimension to fix all this. And like Ubel is the key. But then we figure out that Ubel is looking for the Sacred Beast cards to help, because her ultimate goal is to later on you find out like the merging of like 12 dimensions to where only her and Jaden is only two people around, because her ultimate goal is to keep Jaden safe despite everything she says prior to this, saying like, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you just like you hurt me, kind of thing. And it's very ironically, I just recently watched the Obi-Wan Kenobi season episode where you get to see like Vader, and it's like you get that kind of parallels where it's like Jaden is the Obi-Wan who caused Ubel's Anakin to hurt, whereas like only difference is Jaden did not realize, he can't remember what he did to Ubel, but she got the Sacred Beast cards and decides to duel Jaden just to make him suffer, and just like now it's like he got like people hurting around him, and it's like obviously causing amount of stress, and and like he's trying to like save everybody. Then Professor Eisenstein, along with Bastion, who you haven't seen Bastion while he left the Society of Light, to who thanks to the scientists relearns his appreciation for the love of science, so he decides to leave Dual Academy to work alongside his idol in the field of science. And thanks to with the assistance of these two, Pegasus and Chancellor Shepard, who Lord knows what he was doing, like trying to find, I guess, the Rainbow Dragon or whatever, but get this Rainbow Dragon that Jace has been seeking for the longest time. With strong dual energy, will force like a bridge between the two universes to bring everybody back home. So there's like a small opening between this bridge between these two worlds. They where you get to see Echo halting Pegasus mission, where he's trying to like create get the slab of rock with the image of the Rainbow Dragon, and you see like a little bit of how like Pegasus creates new cards, which is kind of like a dual disc, similar to Crowler. and he like and use these kind of gloves and his visor and like kind of like Minority Reports a card together with like different colors and like different designs and all this stuff. Puts it in the computer, sends it off to be formed into a card, so the scientists can send it off through like a missile, not like a missile, but kind of like a capsule attached to a missile. Sends it through the small opening to this sand dimension. So they eventually acquire it, and Jesse partners with Jaden to duel against Yubel, who finally takes form, a physical form, thanks to all the dual energies he sucked up through all these people. And they've, she summoned like all these three second beasts, fuse them together to make armor tile, and the Rainbow Dragon and armor tile blast at each other, and this widens the bridge, so they brought eventually everybody back. But Jesse's gone missing now, which puts Jaden in like a big funk now, where it's like he formed like a strong bond, I guess, with Jesse, but the way he went gung ho trying to beat himself up over it on top of everything. But he then after they figured out there's like still like a dimensional rift, a small one, because Yubel's still around and she is like still wreaking havoc, but in this different dimension. But Jaden's treating like him and Jesse as like longtime lovers or something, or longtime brothers or something, because he's like, you only met this guy what, a week? And it's like, sure, it's like I might go hard for a friend that I knew for 5 to 10 years of my life, and they've been like long friends, been through a lot together. I can see him doing this for like Cyrus or Chaz or Alexis, but you only knew this guy for a week, and yeah, he's a good dude, but you're like going hard, like, because was him, Atticus, Alexis, Prowler inadvertently, and Echo inadvertently, but like Zane, Axel, Hasselberry, Chaz, Cyrus, they all like go to this dimension rift to this other dimension, where it's like apparently there's people who got in from a different dimension, whose I guess worlds seemingly stuck into like the Middle Ages. They get they tell their story, like they get sucked into this different dimension where like certain leaders are dual monsters in real life, who's protecting them from these fiends, who's also monsters. And you see Tanya, who you saw as one of the Shadow Riders, who's I don't know how she where she come from, because like she seems like she's from Jaden's world, but somehow who turned into like a tiger, an Amazoness tiger. And it's like, okay, clearly she's from like I guess it kind of explains where she comes from. She comes from a different dimension, that somehow this guy who lead the Shadow Riders sucked her from. I don't know, but Tanya's leading like a small group of rebel monster fighters to free them from enslavement, because they being controlled. These fiends are being militarized by this supreme king. But then Jada and the others realize, along with Jim and Axel who tagged along, they quickly realize, okay, people who I guess in the sub they die, but in the dub they if you lose a duel you get it's kind of, think of it like Avengers Infinity War. They get dusted. These guys turn to particle stars and get sent away to the stars, as they put it. But essentially they get snapped away. They died. Uh, so like you lose your, like life points completely, you automatically die. So things will get pretty serious. And now since Jaden is completely got one mindset, he's completely like, uh, as like others put it, like he's getting so gung ho about Jesse. Once again, you only know this guy for like at best a week, but he's completely ignoring all his other long term friends who knew him for a good 2 years at this point, been through a lot, and it's like, we get to Jim in a minute because that's another thing I want to point out, but they going hard. He's going hard, like ignoring the pleas to his friends, like they need a rest or they need to do some recon. But no, Jaden is like blinded by like his love for Jesse. He's like screaming out into the middle of nowhere where he knows full well there's dangerous things out there. Jesse, Jesse, where are you? And Axel had to come dragging by his coattails, like, hey, stop screaming like a maniac in a place we don't know nothing about, in clearly a dangerous situation. I know you want to find Jesse, but we need to think things through. But like, Jaden doesn't want to hear it. He acts like he's hearing it, but he's not hearing it, and it's not sticking with the group. He's got a one-track mind at this point, and because of that, his friends get ambushed, and by these like dark world fiends, and one of which puts like a spell on Chaz, Hasselberry, Atticus, Alexis, and Cyrus, where like they get these little sigils on their body parts, wrath, anger, which is pretty much almost the same thing in a way, doubt and sadness and like something else. I forgot what Atticus had, but they they get captured and used as a sacrifice by this fiend who trying to build the super polymerization. And of course Cyrus wasn't captured, so he couldn't complete the ritual. But Jaden now is in, even though he beat him, he falls into despair because his one-track mind of trying to find Jesse, he ended up ignoring the pleas and like the interest of his friends that he knew longer, and they end up dying because of him. And this is like, this is getting to like, leading to like his turning to the dark side in a way, is very Anakin Skywalker. It's like, in his search for what his good intentions, because Anakin wanted to save Padme, Jaden wanted to save Jesse. And in that search for that, feeling like they failed or being easily led to the dark side, Jaden becomes the Supreme King, and the Supreme King is kind of like part of him anyway, because in like another lifetime, that was part of his like it's kind of like his Yami Yugi in a way, but that Supreme King was like completely like ruthless. He using dark fusions and like turn his elemental heroes to like elemental evil heroes, because it's like pretty much if you got like Superman allegories with like certain cards, now he's using like Ultraman or Homelander kind of situation now. Just like a completely flip of like dark heroes or just villains, or you can just go with like Lex Luthor as opposed to Superman. So now he's like ruling this uh, world with an iron fist, and his dark side pretty much like having like a grip over uh Jaden's sanity at this point, because he's pretty much like lost himself. He's like he he caused the death of his closest friends, and that broke him, and still can't find Jesse, which was the whole purpose of him coming here. So the Supreme King is pretty much like having hordes of these fiends, uh sending people to the stars or just killing them, and and with Jim and Axel trying to stop him. Jim, who has this like bandaged eye, who has this like called the Eye of Orichalcum, not to confuse with Calcos, even though I think it's part of the same thing. I don't know where the heck that is, but this caused him to be able to see, peer into, like, that's why he's always can read people so well. And he sees that the good side of Jaden is still in the Supreme King, but he's got to bring him out. But Jim ended up failing, and Axel, who's always been like so sure of himself, now felt fear, that he haven't felt in such a long time, turns and runs after losing Jim. And of course Cyrus, now that he's kind of angsty now, and now he's like went from like a bumbling like crybaby, now he's like trying to be all emo about it. Then he meets up with his brother, who is less so sadistic, but he still wants like a good duel, but which is like, I don't know, because he's starting to having like heart problems, because like those underground tournaments and the shock guards that he puts on himself to like really hype up the intensity of the duel, but that affected his heart. Now it's like, I guess because he got his life is like reaching his like end in a way. Now I guess he has like a different outlook, or at least he's like a little bit slowly getting his like previous self back. But it's weird, because it's like I don't understand, like, okay, why you still not like full on like rage monster kind of thing. But he's hanging with Aster, and pretty much getting like Cyrus, reminding Cyrus that don't give up on your friend. Clearly he needs you, and you shouldn't abandon him. And because Cyrus's arc, and it's like I said, it's kind of went too fast in the other direction with his mood. Because this should be like kind of sort of his self-assuredness that he's trying to portray. He should have been like this from the jump, from this beginning of this season, but he started off acting like he did in like season 2ish, I guess. But now it's like he's becoming what he wanted to be, like maybe not like the ultimate hero, but standing on his own 2 feet and a little bit more self-assured, and giving Axel more confidence in himself. Like, you're a hero, and despite Axel tossing his dual disc and not want to be a hero because he ran like a coward, and now he's like, he's regretting himself. He's regretting his mistake, but he's afraid, and he's like need other people to remind him. It's like, courage isn't like the absence of fear. It's doing what you know is right despite being afraid. And despite this, Axel found himself again, and thanks with like Axel, Aster. No, thanks to Aster, Cyrus, and Zane, he found the confidence in himself to take Axel taking on the Supreme King, and bringing Jaden back. And in a way, he had to sacrifice himself in the process. because technically it ends in a draw, but he doesn't have any kind of like so super fatigued trying to like use the Eye of Orichalcum to like purge the darkness from him, but not fully because the uh, Supreme King is still part of his essence. It's like trying to neutralize your yang side from your yin side, which is not, ideal. But now Jaden is suffering from PTSD from like things that he's done. He still remember the things he's done, and he's feeling horrible about it, and like he's trying to avoid. Well, I think he's doing like in a way opposite of what you probably normally would see, because well, when it comes to the problemization card, he refused to play. He's avoiding. He's doing this whole avoidance thing, to where he's like, looking at the exact thing that caused so much pain that he inflicted, and he's trying to avoid the tool that he needs to, help him win the duels, to help him get to the next step. He refused to play it, and but he's going to places where terrible things have happened that he witnessed. He forces, in a way, forces himself to remember the atrocities, but he's feeling horrible about it. But thanks to like Bastion and Zane reminding him that, well, with like Bastion's words, it's like, you feel bad for what you did, then this is your chance to make things right. You gotta buck up and like duel your heart out. And with Zane, he's showing him like, don't be afraid to duel your hardest. Go all out, win or lose. Duel like your life depending on it. Duel like it's your last days. Duel like you used to. And then because you see Zane dueling against Yubel Jesse, where Yubel took over to Jesse's body. And then you see like Adrian, who later dueled against Yubel Jesse. Him coming to terms with the fact that, oh my God, in my quest for power, and despite Echo, who wanted to see me achieve that dream, I ended up sacrificing life to acquire Exodia, and that wasn't enough to stop Yubel to achieve my dream of acquiring power. So, but Adrian ended up beating Astra Phoenix, who Astra somehow like formed some kind of weird fast bond with Echo, who, like I said, is a weird ride or die kind of chick. Oh, and Jim had like a flashback. He's trying to reach the good side of Jaden, but they haven't formed that like strong bond like that, because they haven't known each other that long to like, because it's a very anime kind of thing where it's like, oh, they're they become quick friends out of a few days from like whatever. But like he sees Shirley, like, oh, I never seen Shirley grown so attached to somebody so quickly before. And it's like, that's just Jaden. Yeah, because he had like main protagonist plot armor, and that's why he's such fast friends. He's the main protagonist. But it's weird. It's like, and they got a hell of a flashbacks in this. It's like, guys, you just flashback to something we just seen. Like, I know it was airing weekly, so you kind of catching people up of what happened in previous episodes. But it's like you doing a hell of a lot of flashbacks. It's like they took out the bulk of a lot of episodes. But Jaden duels against possessed Jesse. Thanks to the help of the spirits of the Crystal Beast, he finally got in touch with the good side of Jesse and purged Yubel from Jesse's body. Now it's down to Jesse and Yubel, and Jaden remembers thanks to like these memory bubbles and it's kind of like during like the battle in the Colosseum between uh, Kaiba and Yugi. They see like the past and like that past version of themselves. Jaden sees the past version of himself in a different life, uh, where like Yubel was servant to like this family, royal family, where like uh, I guess an ancestor of Jaden's or whatever, where he's supposed to be looking after, he's supposed to be the guardian of his like this prince, which used to be like an ancestor or Jaden in a different life. He took on this kind of like a ancient ritual to where it's kind of like surgery in a way, because it's weird because Yubel is clearly female, but prior to this experimentation, he clearly seemed like a boy. And it doesn't seem like they trying to portray him as androgynous or anything like that, but clearly it's kind of like, going through like, like a, I guess, in a way, trans. Yubel's kind of like trans, I guess. But this ritual is supposed to be making sure like Yubel will always be around no matter what form the prince will take in later years. Yubel will always be around some form to protect, this prince. And that's where you get like young Jaden, to where it doesn't explain why whenever he duels somebody, they fall down and get ill or hurt in some way. And it's just Yubel like attacking. But in the sub, Yubel is in love with Jaden, in all forms of Jaden. But in the dub, it's like, oh, they're strong bonds of friendship. But they, Yubel is clearly in love with Jaden. So that's where like you get the electroshock therapy with the parents, because they think like it's something wrong with a kid, because Jaden saw dual spirits for the longest time, and that's why you never see like their parents around. But Yubel hurting a lot of people, so just like with the Neo-Spacians, Jaden figures, oh, Yubel, you get purged with this cosmic, radiation, in space, maybe to purge all the negative emotions, or like, give them like, like pure heart, like, the Neo-Spacians. But upon some kind of like this crazy kind of cosmic accident, Yubel didn't go in the same, because I don't know why you put in like a different capsule than like the Neo-Spacians, but Yubel goes to this different route, and this different form of cosmic radiation or something like that caused Yubel to like suffer, and despite her trying to reach out to young Jaden, he getting nightmares, and like that's where the whole electroshock therapy comes into play. So now Jaden just forgets about Yubel, which caused her to have, seek revenge for feeling like she's been completely abandoned by someone who she was close to and supposed to have been protecting. And now she's like, it's kind of like love. It's kind of like the thin line between love and hate. She hates him for what he's done to her, but she still loves him to the point where she want to merge all these universes together into one single universe, to where only her and him remains. So that way it's secured that there's no, because he hints that there's a larger entity in play that seeks to hurt you in the end, and I won't allow that. So the best way to make sure, it's kind of like artificial intelligence. It's like, in order to help humanity, you got to destroy humanity, kind of thing, whatever. So the only way to help Jaden is to make sure that only Jaden and her is around in the world, in the entire universe, because that way there's no chance of a threat or a possible threat. But Jaden, who, thanks to like Jesse, encouragement and Cyrus' encouragement, you have to, the and Bastion, the Supreme King is a part of you. You have to embrace that part, but control it. Uh, it's kind of like righteous anger. It's like use it to like, you know, to help others because you're angry. It's kind of like, uh, it's like directing your anger. It's kind of like the Hulk in a way. It's like, you can't control it, but maybe you can aim it, or at least like Professor Hulk, you merge yourself uh, with the Supreme King to where it's like you're in harmony. To now that you can go toe to toe with Yubel, but then beating Yubel isn't like, not in a traditional sense, isn't the way to go. He figures that, okay, what I did to you was completely wrong. Even though it's like he kind of sort of takes responsibility because he didn't mean for Yubel to go through all that years of torture, but he cannot allow Yubel to go on like this to constantly hurt people in the sake of revenge. So he used super polymerization to fuse Yubel's essence with him along with the Supreme King, so that way they will always be forever together. But this also not only brings everybody back to the main universe, but for the time being, like you'll see in like in beginning of season 4, it takes like a little bit of time before Jaden comes back into the main universe, but Adrian Gecko hasn't returned. He never returned, even in the sub. He's just gone forever for some reason. I'm pretty sure there's a reason. Maybe they explain it in the manga, but Bastion stays behind because he's in love with Tanya and he stays with her. But as a matter of fact, but that ends the season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX on a kind of a bittersweet notion because nobody knows what happened to Jaden. But let me see, because I'm too curious about like what the hell happened to him because they never explain in the sub or the dub. Uh, uh, yeah, Adrian is one of the few who does not return after Jaden's final duel with Yubel, as well as Zane, Bastion, and Jaden himself. But later, Jaden and Zane later return, and Bastion chooses to stay behind. Yeah, Adrian's fate remains unknown, so it's like, uh, so it's never explained what happened to him. But let's see about like the manga. Maybe that explains. No, no, it doesn't. So his fate just remains unknown. They never bring it up again. So yeah, uh, so that's another tragic character who kind of tragic because he just can't be satisfied for uh what he has. He like it's like Kaiba being threatened by Mokuba for being potentially taking over Kaiba Corp from him, but it's just like he doesn't completely embrace uh, his brother and be satisfied with his role in things in life because he has a family. He just can't be satisfied with just having that in a life. And like he doesn't acknowledge the love that Echo clearly has for him. And Echo isn't like she has like a weird kind of position in life where she's like, I just protecting Adrian, and it's like I've been through things with him, but it's like you don't have the cojones to like say what you feel, which is tragic in and of itself because she willingly sacrificed herself to Exodia just to make sure he has power and has rule over a world to where he's like, reigns supreme, which is what he wanted. But yeah, like I said, this is like the most heavy part of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and things, you know, you know, there is an ultimate big bag. I kind of wish they made a English dub for season 4, but like with Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, I think it's season 4. There was, or at least no, halfway through season 3, they stopped airing, doing like any English dubs, and they had to wrap up with the sub stuff. And it's behind the scenes, writers or like just people weren't being paid, stuff like that. It's very business oriented stuff that wasn't resolved, that wouldn't allow the completion of the English dub version of the stuff. But yeah, I honestly I'm digging. Like I dug a lot of this season. I kind of wish they kind of minimize the flashbacks and kind of like cut out certain episodes and like just to make this season a little bit more tighter. Uh, but I'm hard pressed to say like certain things weren't really needed because they kind of feed into the next episode so fluently. Like even with like these old other villagers, even though I personally think like okay, they kind of add to like the importance of dealing with these other monsters and keeping like the army of the Supreme King from like killing everybody. But ultimately, I personally think like they could have just not have this entire like subplot altogether, but they kind of add the urgency of the situation too, because you need sacrificial lambs in a way to show the dire situation. But like I said, I didn't care for Echo. I wish they, didn't relegate Crowler to this, buffoon who's supposed to be some goofy comic relief, I guess. But instead, he should have been like the Professor Snape of this entire series. I didn't like what they did with Alexis being like a naggy bitch, and with showing no dueling in herself. She completely got sidelined. Cyrus, little in the air, kind of. I just kind of feel they didn't know what to do with Cyrus half the time. I remember watching during the lockdown period. That's when the first time I watched the season 4 sub version. There's very few times I watched sub anything. Cyrus has more agency in that, which it should have been brought here, but we'll get to that. But a lot of these characters, I love the new characters with like Jim, Axel. Those guys are awesome. I wish they did a little bit more with Aster. I kind of feel like he sort of got sidelined, but at least he got more to do than Alexis did. But I like the arc ultimately with Jaden, because like he started off like a goofy, aloof kind of duelist who's really good and super carefree, but as the years go on, you see that him have to take certain things, him maturing a bit, but it's like you see in season 4, he's kind of like, you'll see like him going too far in the other direction with it, but he's had to learn like to maintain like a balance between like, you can be, I'm carefree, I'm laid back too, but I know to recognize that some things you have to take very seriously. and it's a mark of maturity. Uh, but we'll get to that. But let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 3, if you recall it or if you've seen it recently. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. Let me know about your thoughts. And yeah, I will see you guys soon for Season 4, the final season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I'm going to get right into that very soon. And after that, I'll get back to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in the season after Jotaro Kujo's arc. And yeah, that I'm looking forward to because I love Josuke. I love that character. And that is going to be kind of heavy too. But yeah, see you guys next time. Peace.